Hey, thanks for joining me today. It's great having you here. I'd like to share a few ways that you can boost your energy. Now, there are four proven strategies I'd like to share with you today. And, as an introvert, the thing that makes you different, or a key part of being an introvert that makes you different from extroverts, is that you need to be alone to recharge. So it's really important that you understand yourself and that you have strategies to help you manage your energy. So I would like to share just four with you today that are proven to help boost your energy. And I know many of these for me have made a big difference. So without much further ado, let's get right to the strategies. And the first one is this: make a stop doing list. Jim Collins is a prolific author that many are familiar with, at least in business. And he's the originator of this idea. He says, if you're going to start something really meaningful and focus on what matters, you need to figure out what you're going to stop doing. And I just like to tweak that idea a little bit and apply it to you and me as introverts. Stop and think for a minute. Take an inventory of all that's going on in your life. As people living in today's culture, we're told that in order to be meaningful contributors, we need to be engaged. In fact, we need to be so engaged that we really don't have downtime. So many of us are involved in work, we're involved in school, we're involved in shuttling our kids around everywhere. We're in extracurriculars, we're part of groups, maybe we're serving in our community, maybe we are serving at our church. And then in the free time, we're supposed to keep up our houses, make sure everything is clean. We're supposed to spend time with our spouses. You just can't do it all and get sleep and get exercise without getting burnt out. You're going to have to figure out what needs to go. And it's particularly difficult as introverts because we have to make time for ourselves, have downtime. So what I'm suggesting you do is what Stephen Covey already pointed out. Put first things first. When was the last time that you took 10 to 15 minutes to think about what mattered most and what you need to focus on? I bet there's some activities in your life that if you were to ask politely, you could get out of. Think about the people that you're working with that you could talk to and tell them, hey, I'm really trying to do a better job focusing on the number one priorities in my life. And I've enjoyed serving in this capacity. I've enjoyed being involved here, but I've done some thinking and I've decided I need to stop doing this for this season of my life. Maybe I can come back in the future, but right now I'd like to finish. Now, you might already have some commitments that you're involved in that you just can't get out of because you said you're going to do it and you need to follow through with your word, and that's okay. But I bet if you give it a little bit of thought, there's some other things that you could get out of. For me, I've always played basketball and I still really enjoy basketball, but there's some other things that I wanted to focus on. So I had to decide, I'm going to stop playing morning basketball and I'm not going to do a summer basketball league. That was one thing that I had to take away. And, I was still able to exercise. Oftentimes I'll get my exercise bike out here. I'll go for a run, something that takes the place of it. Instead of spending 2 hours, I'm able to get the exercise done rather, in about 30 minutes. So what are some things for you? I know that's a really simple example, but maybe there's some kind of commitment that you've been involved in that's just one too many. Could you look at the things that you're engaged in and figure out which ones are the most important, even if it's a napkin in front of you right now that you can grab, or just a spare sheet of paper? Just the fact that you're writing it down and thinking through this can really make a big difference in your life. So number one, the first thing that you can do that will make a big difference with your energy is to make a stop doing list. And I'd really encourage you to pick one thing, just one thing that you could plan to stop so you could focus on what matters most. Strategy number two for boosting your energy as an introvert is to schedule downtime. When was the last time you made some downtime just to be alone by yourself? As an introvert, again, you need to have that alone time in order to recharge. Now, you might already just build this in out of necessity, but I doubt that you do it enough. One of the things that's been just a huge benefit to me is getting up extra early in the morning. In fact, I read a book recently by Rebecca Livermore and Steve S. Scott, who are prolific Kindle authors, but they wrote a book called Confident You, and it was written to introverts, and it addressed a number of introvert problems. And one of these was getting enough downtime. One of the people in their book that they quoted said that each morning he got up with enough time that he'd have 3 hours to himself. That was when he did reading. That's when he exercised. That's when he had some alone time. And just doing that gave him the energy to make it through the day. Not just make it through, but to have a good day. I've experienced the same thing in my life. When I've gotten to bed at an earlier time and I've gotten up early, those quiet hours before the workday starts, before the kids are up, before anyone else is up, are just the ultimate productivity time. But they're also quiet where I can focus. I can spend time reading. I can spend time thinking. I can really get some things done. So if you've never tried a morning routine before, you should give it a try. It's a really great way to boost your energy. And if you're afraid you can't do it, just give it a go. In fact, one of the biggest things you can do to get yourself out of bed, I'm not sure if you're a coffee drinker, but having a little bit of coffee can really get you going in the morning. Or maybe just taking a shower before you get up or going for a quick run. Something like that can make a big difference. So try that morning routine and make it part of your daily life. If you're at a different stage in life and maybe you can make that time at the end of the day, that could be huge too. When I used to live with some other guys before I got married, at the end of each day, I would take like an hour to read before I went to bed. It made a huge difference in my life. Maybe you have some time in the afternoon. I don't know what kind of schedule you're on. Think about something you could do to boost your energy in that regard. So that's the daily habit. And then each week, it's good to have a couple hours to yourself on a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, and maybe even a half a day to a day when you can spare it or more. So could you plan that in? A lot of times what we schedule on our calendar gets done, but if you don't take the time to put it on the calendar, it gets ignored. It's not a priority. So just take a little bit of time to schedule that. And then I'd encourage you to look at the month as a whole and think about one day maybe that you could take to yourself, or like half a day you could take to yourself to go for a walk, to get out of the house, to go for a drive, to do something alone where you could recharge. And then finally, think about your year. Do you have a couple of days that you could take to spend in quiet reflection, to spend in alone time, to think about your year, or just to have the solace that you need? Maybe you could do a week. I don't know. Maybe you could go with your spouse. I don't know if these things are possible, but the point is not to make it perfect, but to start. What can you do to get started? A very important key to boosting your energy is scheduling that downtime. Number 3, the third thing you can do to boost your energy is to request focus time at work. So as introverts, one of your greatest gifts, as introverts, one of our greatest gifts is the ability to focus. And when you do work that interrupts you, it's hard to do your best work. A lot of the work that we have to do is helter-skelter. You're doing several things at once, and that's just kind of the nature of the beast. We all have to do some of that kind of work. We all have to talk on the phone. We all have to communicate with our coworkers. We all have to do extrovert activities from time to time. That's the reality of our lives. But my question to you is, are you getting time where you can work in quiet and get into the zone? There's a book called 5 Gears. I can't think of the author of it right now, but he says, the author of that book says that we all have different gears and we work at different levels. But when you get into that 5th gear, that's like uber productivity. And extroverts don't necessarily get into that so much. They're productive in other ways, but introverts have this ability to crank out extra work when they can really zero in on a task and get laser focused. But you need that quiet, and it takes about half an hour, 15 minutes to half an hour to get into that focus zone. So my question is, do you have the time when you can do that? And as Susan Cain has pointed out in her book, Quiet, the environments that we're in right now make it more difficult for us. Our workplaces are moving toward open office spaces where coworkers are talking and collaboration is encouraged. And these aren't necessarily bad things unless you're trying to focus and get into that deep work. And you may have heard that book title before by Cal Newport. He talks about the same concept where, there's different kinds of work we do in our jobs. But the work that makes us employees that our employers can't get rid of is the kind where we're doing work that would take years to train somebody else to get up to speed for. And that's the deep work. That's that focus work where we can't be interrupted. That's the stuff that really matters. So you've got to have the quiet to do this. So here are the recommendations. A couple things, okay? If possible, try telecommuting to work. More and more in our day and age, you have the possibility to work from home for a couple of days. So if possible, ask your supervisor or your boss to allow you to try this for a time. Now, if you're worried that if you're worried that they'll say no, just start by asking. See if you can run it by as a trial experiment. I think Tim Ferriss talks about this in his book, The 4-Hour Workweek, which has been around for a while. But he says, just see if they'll give you a day, maybe a day, if nothing else, or a couple hours. And what you need to do when they agree with that, even if it's like on site, if you go to a separate space where it's a little more quiet, if they agree with that, go and then make sure you keep track of your progress in that time and focus down. Make sure you're uber productive. Show them with bulleted points what you're able to accomplish. And then compared to what you're normally able to do, how much more productive you were in that time. And that will go a long way in convincing them that it's better for the company as a whole, as well as you, if you're able to work in that quiet space. Again, Cal Newport in his book said that with one of the people, he was able to ask his boss for 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the afternoon where he could work quietly and not be interrupted and do that deep work. And it made a huge difference for him. And so as introverts, our energy is focused inwardly on thoughts, memories, and experiences. And we do our best work when we can focus in our minds. But if we have external stimuli coming and interrupting our thought process, we're not going to be able to do our best work. So you need to go and get that quiet place to do it. So maybe that's working from home, telecommuting. Maybe that's just moving to a different place in the office, something like that. And, if neither of those things work, there's still other options. Maybe you could just come in earlier to get it done. That's totally an option. I've done that before where you get in. My coworker comes in every day at 6 o'clock. Our school starts, I'm a teacher, our school starts at 8:40, I think the kids come, and most coworkers come at 8. He gets there at 6 and he gets a ton done because he's able to work in quiet without distraction. So coming early is an option, staying late is an option, working on stuff from home, but do something where you can get that quiet focus that you need to really get stuff done. Okay. And this last one's going to be a little surprising because it's not necessarily what you would think, but I'll go ahead and say it. It's this: promote your work. You probably are cringing just to think about the idea of promoting your work, because as introverts, our dream is that people would just automatically notice the good work we're doing without us having to say anything at all. And to some extent, that's true. To some extent, that goes on. But the sad reality of our lives is that if we want other people to see what we're contributing, we need to say something about it. Now, I'm not suggesting that you go out, like Brian Regan talks about, and be a me monster. Don't make it all about you. Don't tell everybody how great you are. Don't, every chance you have to talk about your accomplishments. That's counter. It works against what you want to get done. It's going to have a negative result. But there's something to be said about tracking your results and being ready to present them clearly and concisely in an appropriate setting. For instance, my wife, she works at a restaurant store. They sell restaurant goods online. And each month she has the opportunity to meet with her supervisor and to review her progress and to share ideas for making things better. And during that time, her supervisor is asking her what she's contributed. So that would be a great opportunity to share what she's able to get done. And a good thing to do would to keep track of certification she's gotten, courses she's taken, certain problems she's been able to handle, problems she's been able to solve that other people haven't been able to solve, new solutions she's been able to come up with, new ideas. All that can be written down so that others can clearly see what you're contributing. Because the challenge of being an introvert is that all your best work happens inside your head where nobody else can see it. Extroverts, it's very clear for the most part what they're doing because it's observable to the outside world. It goes on where everybody can see and hear it. They talk a lot more and they do a lot more outside. And I'm not making fun of extroverts. There's nothing bad about that. That's just the way they are, and it's good, and we need it in our society. But they won't notice what you are contributing as an introvert unless you bring it out and share it. So use your strength of being able to research and prepare and get organized ahead of time and to keep track of things. And then maybe warm up a little bit before you go, but be prepared to share clearly what you're able to contribute. And this is going to do a couple things for you. Number one, people are going to appreciate what you're contributing and bringing to the team. They're going to see maybe what they haven't seen before, and they might tell you, nice job. And you know what? We all need to hear that from time to time. We need to know that our work is valued and appreciated. And number two, and maybe this is the most important, they're going to know the specific things that you're good at and that you like to do, and they're going to ask you to do more of that kind of work, hopefully. And you're going to enjoy your job more and more as you get more of the kind of work that you like to do as you pivot into the roles that you really enjoy. So a great way to boost your energy is to do a little self-promotion in an appropriate setting in a way that makes the team and the business better by clearly delineating what your strengths are and what you bring to the team. So those are just 4 simple ways that you can boost your energy. Number 1 was to make a stop doing list. Number 2 was to schedule downtime. Number 3, I'm trying to remember what number 3 was. Number 3 was to request focus time, or to make sure you have a place you can focus. And then number 4 was to do a little bit of self-promotion. So here's my challenge for you today. If you made it all the way to the end, congratulations. Stop and think about which one of those would make the biggest difference for you. Which one would be the biggest challenge, and which one would make the biggest difference? And choose just one of them. Because if you try to do all of them, you might not get any result at all. But choose one and choose a simple action step you can take today that would make a difference for your energy. And then I want you to write it down, because when you write it down, you encode it into your long-term memory, and you also increase the chances significantly. I think the percentage is like 60% that you're actually going to carry that out. And then tell someone or a couple someones what you plan to do, and then execute it. Because as Tony Robbins has said really well, and I'm not the biggest Tony Robbins fan, but this quote's great. He says, if you change nothing, nothing will change. It's a really good point. So what are you going to change today to boost your energy?